Joining me in studio, the managing director of Breitbart, Texas, Brandon Darby. Welcome back, man.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
How's it going?
It's going good. I'm having my coffee. I have my Perrier water.
You're doing good.
Yeah.
You're doing good. Now, one thing about you, you are probably, as far as journalists go, the most daring that we have in this state, because you are going to all the hot spots, not only in this country, but right along the border. I mean, you're all over the place.
We go into Mexico quite a bit. Yeah, we do.
Why, as far as the border issues go, and our last guest that we had in studio, Colonel Starr, was talking about the immigration problem and the drug problem that we're seeing here in Lubbock. Sheriff here in Lubbock has said that we've seen a dramatic increase, not only in drugs, but in cartel violence here. You've been covering that on the border. Why is that such a major issue for you?
Well, you know, it's kind of a long story, but the bottom line of it is I don't like bullies at all. And I think that's why Andrew Breitbart and I were close, and I think that's why he brought me into his company, you know, in its infancy, and why I'm still here, is we don't like bullies, and we don't like it when people don't have a voice. Mm-hmm. And what we found is on both sides of the border, it's not just the north side like most conservatives say, and it's not just the south side like in Mexico, like some people on the left say. It's both sides of the border. What we found is for different reasons, the communities on both sides of the border don't have a voice. What we found is that there are Border Patrol agents out there who risk their lives. A lot of them get killed doing this job and protecting our border, and they don't have a voice. For political reasons, they are the most politically attacked law enforcement in the country. So we found all these people who didn't have a voice, and we found a way to bring a voice to them. And it has taken years of hard work, years of being there constantly, years of missing time with my child. But I'm going to tell you what, we found a way to do it. And now the border is a huge issue for people. And still, a lot of the candidates they lack understanding of the border. In fact, I'd say all of the candidates do on the Republican side and definitely on the Democrat side, but I'm going to focus on the Republican side right now. They lack an understanding, but we're getting there. People understand, people care. People don't realize how bad some of the groups, you know, the government calls transnational criminal groups that we're going to call cartels. Mm-hmm. They don't realize how bad they are. They don't realize what they do to people, and they don't realize how it affects our lives here, and how some of the things that we want to do are really hurt and damaged by the problems at the border. You know.
What are some of the fundamental maybe flaws or misunderstandings that when you're talking about the Republican candidates who are running for president, or maybe just Republican candidates, period? What are some of the fundamental flaws that they're missing on the border?
Well, the major flaw is this, and I'm going to say this, and some people out there are going to go, especially if there's Democrats listening, which I assume there's a couple of Democrats in Lubbock.
Yeah, we got a few Democrats.
The lone liberals, yeah. The major flaw is that people don't understand that it's our policies. Our policies create what's called pull factors, right? So you can do everything you want to do on the border, and unless you also address our immigration policies, it's not going to do as much good as it's not going to do a lot of good. But at the same time, you can address our immigration policies and not address some of the security issues on the border. So everything plays hand in hand. And I know it's a word that you'd expect to hear in Austin and not in Lubbock, but you have to take a holistic approach to the border. And no one really does that. You know, you have some of the candidates like Jeb, and you have Marco Rubio who have been, and now he's saying something different, but he has been profoundly ignorant about immigration issues on our border and our southern border. And then you have folks like Cruz and Trump, and I like Cruz and Trump. You know, I'm not anti. I even like Rubio, and I'm sure I would like Jeb if I had a beer with him or something, right?
Right.
I don't like him as a politician, but I'm sure I would like him in other ways. I'm not saying he's a bad guy, but even Cruz and Trump have some limitations. They seize on one component of border security, and they roll with it, and they act like it's the answer. And there's not the answer. There are a bunch of answers that have to fit together very intricately, or it's not going to work. You know, one of the things that, like I said, with the Democrats can get mad at me, I'm a very big pro-border security person, and in fact, probably more so than anyone I know, you know. I'm also a very big person on stopping illegal immigration. But the thing is I come from a humanitarian standpoint. I make a humanitarian argument for border security. I know what people go through to get here. I know that in order to get into this country illegally, you have to go through the hands of a transnational criminal group, a Mexican cartel. I know that approximately 80% of the young girls and women who come from Central America expect sexual assault on the way up here. I know about the dead bodies in Falfurrias and Brooks County. I know about people being put into indentured servitude, forced servitude, by getting here, paying a certain amount of money, and then being told, like, no, you're going to pay me X amount per week, or I'm going to kill your mom back in Guanajuato, or back in Central America. I know these factors, so I know what we're encouraging is actually brutal. So while liberals and some Republicans think that they're doing something loving for people in Mexico and Central America by encouraging this mess, they're not. They're actually hurting people. They're furthering human oppression, and there is a humanitarian case to be made for border security. And sadly, I don't hear anyone making it on a national stage other than us.
How many times would you say you've been to the border?
I couldn't even count. Roughly for the last 3 years, I've spent, I don't know, anywhere from 5 to 15 days a month.
Wow.
Traveling back and forth between the 9 Border Patrol sectors on the border.
And still, with all the writing you have done and others at Breitbart, Texas, on the border, it is something that, let's say, the Washington Post, New York Times, they don't want to touch it. Why is that?
Well, here's the deal. This is what I mean about being silenced. And you have to understand, to left-of-center people, and this is something that actually makes me kind of mad, is that left-of-center people think that they have a monopoly on helping others. They have a monopoly on bringing a voice to the voiceless, and the truth couldn't be further from that. You think about this, man. If you're a left-of-center journalist or a left-of-center editor, the last thing you want to do is bring attention to the horrors that are going on our southwest border. You don't want to do that because you feel like it promotes a Republican narrative. That's what you think. You think it's going to promote border security. It's going to promote change. You don't want that to happen. If you're on the right, you can't promote it or you can't push it because if you push part of it, you can. If you just push what like the drug dealers who come across or the sex offenders who come across, because a lot do. I mean, in a 3-year period, we reported last year there was over 7,000 previously convicted sex offenders who were deported from Texas alone. That's a big deal in a 3-year period. I mean, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
So if you focus on that, it promotes a right-of-center narrative. But if you talk about the suffering in Mexico, it almost could be used to promote refugee status, or so both sides. It's a tricky issue, and both sides try to avoid it. Thankfully, the right is not avoiding it now. The left is slow to take it. So, like, you look at the students who had their feelings hurt at Mizzou, right? All the media went there to bring a voice to the voiceless students who are actually rich kids who just had their feelings hurt. But none of them do anything about the people who we're representing, who are in northern Mexico, who live under complete oppression. And I'd like to actually get into that a little bit with you. I'd like to get into some of the plans that some folks in Lubbock have for economic development, and how bad of an idea that really is.
Well, we're going to talk about that when we come back. I want to get not only into that, but also some of your experience, what you've actually seen on the border. When we come back here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. Brandon Darby of Breitbart, Texas, in studio. We're talking about the border and border issues and how they not only affect what's happening on the border, but also the United States and here in Lubbock as well. And Brandon, you were mentioning as we were going to break, there have been plans to extend I-27 down to near the border or to the border for economic development. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here's what I think, man. I think that there has to be security, and that a lack of security prevents economic development. So let me tell you something, man. I very recently I flew to Baltimore to cover the riots in Baltimore. Remember?
Yeah.
And on the way back, I flew to Dallas, and I covered the Pamela Geller event where there was an Islamic terror attack that failed. The 2 terrorists got killed.
Right.
They didn't do very good. They got to shoot one dude in the ankle, and then they died. So I covered that, and that happened. And then immediately from there, I flew to Laredo, and I covered a Zetas drug shipment that was coming across the border without anything interfering with it. And I gave that tape to law enforcement. I actually didn't publish that tape because I wanted the guys busted. Long story, but sometimes I publish stuff. Sometimes I give it to law enforcement, which is controversial in itself. But and I wasn't real happy. You know, I had moved to Lubbock about 2 years ago. I wasn't greatly pleased with Lubbock. You know, as a single guy, it's not the best place. Everybody's married, and you know, and I'm just saying, and. So I shouldn't say it, but you know,
we got
what
a lot
saying.
of single females in here over at Texas Tech.
You know, but you know, when you're a single dad and you're and you travel a lot for work, the last thing you want to do. Well, anyways, okay, that's kind of personal. So when I flew back into Lubbock and we're about to land, and it was bumpy because it was windy, you know, and it was the first time I was like, man, I'm so glad I live here. I live here, and it's not crazy because of our geographic separation. You know, like it's not crazy here. We have problems, but it's a great place to live. It's peaceful. I live out in the country. It's peaceful, man. Yeah. I have a big old, like 3 miles of cotton fields in front of me. You know, I hear a car every so often. You know, it's not crazy here like the rest of the world, and I appreciate that. But here's the deal with that corridor. Let's talk about that for a second. We reported last month, a city council member from Laredo came out, and I think he was a liberal, actually. He wasn't even conservative. But he came out and said, hey, we have this park called Father McNobo Park in Laredo, and the drug dealers just run their dope across right in the middle of the day. It's been happening for a long time. Law enforcement doesn't do anything about it. We've complained about it. And now we have footage and film or photos of them doing it during a middle school football game, right through the middle of the field, running their big old dope loads across. And I was like, you're kidding me. So I looked, and we had the photos. So we ran with the story. The city reacted, the county reacted, but they didn't react for months. They didn't do anything because they didn't have the resources, they said. Okay? That's Laredo, Texas. Nuevo Laredo, immediately across the unsecured river where there's no fence. There's just like a 4 to 5 foot deep river at times. That's not that. There's no security, right? In Nuevo Laredo, that's the headquarters of the Los Zetas cartel. That's their home base. Okay, that's Laredo. That's Nuevo Laredo. Right. The federal agents in Laredo, Texas, when you talk to them or interview them, they will never say Los Zetas cartel. And when you say, why won't you say it? They said, because that makes it personal, and then they might do something to me or my family. That's U.S. federal agents in Laredo that say that to us on record. They'll say, "I'm not saying that. You know, I don't say their name. We'll say a criminal group." They won't say it. People are that afraid. So now you tell me, you want to put a corridor? You want to open up a portal to hell? Like, really? You want to put a corridor into this beautiful, peaceful place, and so some people can benefit economically? And you want to put it right to Nuevo Laredo? Are you kidding me? Right to Laredo, Texas? I mean, Laredo's a great town, great people. But they're not in a great situation, you know, when it comes to the Zetas cartel. Right. And so the other thing is let's look at Mexico's drug war for a second. You know, up to 125,000 dead, maybe 200,000 missing. We really don't know, okay, who all is dead. Now consider this, man. That's because the Sinaloa cartel and the Zetas are having a conflict, okay? It's a drug war. Yeah. Now, if you look at the latest report put out by the DEA last month, it says that the Panhandle and Lubbock are under the influence of the Sinaloa cartel, right? But Laredo is under the influence of the Zetas. So what happens then if we put a corridor straight from there to Lubbock? Who's going to be fighting over Lubbock? It's going to be the Sinaloa and Zetas fighting over Lubbock. I don't want that. So you think we'll see an increase in violence up here if something like that were to happen? You'll see an increase in violence. You'll see an increase in public corruption. You'll see all of the things that all of the cities along major corridors from the border see. And I don't want that. And you know what? I propose that I learned last night they're not Lubbockans, they're Lubbockites. they're not going to want that either. When somebody starts running commercials showing beheaded people and says, these are the Zetas, this highway will go bring them straight here. I don't think people in Lubbock are going to be okay with that. Because if I have to do that, I'll do that. I'll get that done, because I'm telling you what, people need to understand. So when it comes to the mayor, when it comes to the city council members, or any candidate in Lubbock, I hereby offer to take you. If I have to rent a bus, I'll do it, right? I'll take you to Laredo, not to talk to the congressman who's a Democrat, not to talk to his brother who's a sheriff, who's going to put a positive spin, to talk to the agents who actually work on the border, not their politically appointed leadership who are under Obama, none of that. Talk to the agents who are actually on the border. I'll show you each zone in that sector, and you tell me if it's secure, and you tell me if you want a highway taking those people who cross that border straight into this community. I don't think the people in Lubbock are going to want that. So I hope that city council members and the mayor and others in this area, I hope that they take me up on that. A lot of people have taken me up on coming to the border.
Have you had a lot of politicians who have taken you up on any offers to go down to the border?
I have, some off the record, some have done so on the record. But usually what we do is we take grassroots leaders, so we take community leaders, and we've tried to avoid the politician route. Because what politicians do, you have to understand, the border is almost 2,000 miles long.
Yeah.
And what they do is they go down there for a day, they get a little quick tour. It's announced ahead of time that they're going, so the CBP, they build up those security in the area as a Potemkin village as a show. That's what they do. We've documented it tons of times on Breitbart News. And they go down there, they get in a helicopter, they get a quick tour, they talk to two agents, and they come back, and all of a sudden they're an expert on the border, even though they only saw 12 miles of a 2,000-mile border, almost 2,000-mile border. I find that kind of offensive, and then they make themselves the champions of the border, and it's like, you don't know anything. Mm-hmm. You don't know enough. Even if you had a congressional hearing, you don't know enough, because what they do is they call in the politically appointed leadership to come and tell them what's going on the border. And it's like, well, why don't you call in? I could take you to each sector and introduce you to 5 or 10 agents who are veteran agents who have worked that their whole career. Why don't you call them before Congress? Why don't you talk to them about what's really going on? So we invite, Breitbart News cordially invites anyone in leadership in Lubbock who wants to see what that's going to do, to see what they want to build a highway into. We cordially invite them to come with us down there.
Brandon Darby, Breitbart, Texas. As always, good to talk to you. Good luck. Stay safe down there on the border, man.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on.